No matter what you hear the other talking heads say, and these politicians that's gonna get out there and justify this nonsense, this foolishness and mayhem, everyday people in this country are going to lose. So if you want to know what the priorities of any government, whether it be local government, regional, state, or federal, all you gotta do, sisters and brothers and family and friends, is follow the damn money. So let's put up what Dr. Darrick Hamilton had to say. He is an internationally known stratification economist, and he runs the Institute on Race, Power, and Political Economy. And Dr. Darrick laid it out this way. Again, the interests of the poor, those with the least economic and political power, is compromised for a deal. I want y'all to rest right there. Okay, understand that. Wrap your mind around that, right? Is compromised for a deal. Work requirements for a basic right to food is cruel and immoral. Publicity imposed labor market distortion. It should be considered bad, antiquated 20th century policy. And so Dr. Hamilton is responding to what was said that this deal would be about, which Jeff Stein from the Wash Poll laid it out. Summary of the deal, as I understand it. This is at the time he put out the tweet. Debt ceiling raised for 2 years. Domestic programs frozen next year up to 1%. Boost defense, VA money, some tightening of work requirements on TANF and SNAP, energy permitting, and claw back some new IRS money. So let's put Dan up to talk. Let's just talk. I mean, Dr. Darrick, Dan, hit the nail on the head. If people don't remember anything else, this is the Cliff Notes version, as far as I'm concerned, coming from a stratification economist who understands how public policy determines livelihoods. That's it for the most part. Not 100% of it, but a whole lot of it. And how that public policy power is being used to the detriment of everyday people in this country. Your thoughts?
No, that's exactly right. I also love that he works on political economy, because that's a focus I particularly had, because political science and economics are usually taught as though they're not related. And you don't have to go to college or know any of these $5 words to know that it's very related. It affects all of our lives every single day in the working class in the United States. And so what he is saying here, again, to reiterate, and it's really important to capture, is that our politicians have no problem, very little problem. They're not even worried about the fact that they vote all the time to sacrifice the working class, to sacrifice the people of color, to sacrifice where there are actual numbers in the voting base. Because yeah, partially they don't care. Partially it's like a class thing with them, because they're only catering to elites more of the time when it comes to campaign financing and fundraising. But also because especially on the Democratic Party side, which is more annoying because you know the Republicans are gonna be ghouls, they're gonna fight this. But on the Democratic Party side, there's no effort to even try to message it properly. Not message it as going, okay, well, I guess we have this debt ceiling issue and we have to pay our bills. That's the other thing, all right? Because Republicans will always frame this as Democrats don't want to pay our bills. Everyone else, we're all working class, right? Republicans will say this, they're lying. We all have to pay our bills. The only difference between us and the working class and the United States is that the United States prints money. Like we can't. We could work 3, 4, 5 jobs, whatever. We could still not make ends meet. But the US government, they can just print money. It's not that easy. It's not that simple. But you can't say that a country has debt the same way the people you are putting into further debt as a Congress have debt. Like it's a false argument from the start. And because Democrats don't even want to fight that idea, they've tried, they failed, they don't even care to anymore. I think they like this fight at this point. Again, regular people are suffering. And there's margins in the House even for progressives to stand up, make a little bit of a mess about this. We need that right now because this is past desperate times.
Past, and I love how you said they will sacrifice working people on the altar. And again, yes, we print the money. So I want to encourage people, go and watch some of Dr. Stephanie Kelton's work, Modern Monetary Theory, and you will understand. She breaks it down to the fundamentals. She breaks it down that even a 5-year-old can understand it. The federal government is the issuer of the money. I want you to think I want you to think about when COVID was at its height. And I talk about this with one of my dear friends all the time. We talk about how the federal government came in, printed this money to deal with the COVID crisis. This is the same concept. So they are lying to you, and the truth is not in them when they tell you that they can't take that same concept. Because see, they pulling back some of the money that's still there for the COVID emergency because they've declared that it's over. But if you ask average everyday people who are suffering in this country, whether or not they're not suffering anymore, they will tell you hell to the no, that they are still suffering. So I want you to think what happened at the height of the pandemic and how the PPP funds and these checks went out and the world is still spinning on its axis. The United States is still the hegemonic nation that it was before COVID. It still is right now. I want you to think, people, Dan, and I want you to think that the same thing can be done in this moment. And what the GOP demanded of the Democrats and what they gave them is a red herring. Because they got all the money in the world for the military industrial complex, but they ain't got no money and no love and no uplift for the everyday American people in this country. You're being sold out. Now you're absolutely being sold out. So Dr. Stephanie Kelton, Modern Monetary Theory, look her up, get the Cliff Notes version, and you can understand that the United States of America does indeed print money. I want you to get that. Now, Dan, you brought up a very good point. So I wanted to put up what Congresswoman Jayapal, who's the leader of what I call the so-called Progressive Caucus, had to say in an interview. And this reporting is coming from Common Dreams, but through a tweet. And my stunt double got in on this action. Jayapal says White House should worry about Progressive Caucus support for debt ceiling deal, hoping. So that's what she said. Now it's what? I mean, the president heretofore has not been worried about any actions that the Progressive Caucus may or may not take. They not even in the equation because they are toothless tiger. So my stunt double, in response to what Representative Jayapal had to say, hoping the progressives will give the White House something to worry about. Because up until this point, he has not lost any sleep over congressional progressives. I mean, he's done more of a dance with the shadow president, Joe Manchin, who's even thinking about running in 2024 than he has done for the progressives. So my question is, what leverage possibly could the Progressive Caucus think that they have in the 11th hour? Because they haven't used it on any other thing. And then I want to add this before Dan comes in, what David Sirota had to say about this. The alternatives were default or House bill is a lie. So Sirota, who's an investigative reporter, he runs the lever, he's laying it out there. The alternatives were default or the House bill. It's a flat out lie. The entire Dem spin machine relies on liberals accepting this kind of horse manure and being too dumb to remember basic facts just from a few months ago. We're not even talking about a few years ago, but they depend on our memories being short. Right? A bid by Democrats to raise the US debt ceiling this year is failing. That would not be done this year by reconciliation. It takes too much time, Durbin said in the interview. We have 3 weeks and there is too much else on the agenda. Like what? Like what? Because they're not doing anything for the American people. You guys, we taking crumbs while these people playing games with lives. Let's put up the next tweet from David Sirota because he laying this out. Pod Save America bros just screaming the quiet part out loud. One side, debt limit update. Biden outplays GOP on final deal. The debt limit deal is far from ideal, but it's evidence Biden's strategy is working. In whose world? In the world where people have everything? Skip, put Dan up, lead that up, because we about to jump on in there. In whose world though? See, I need them to riddle me this. And for people who will be commenting because you're watching live, Dan and I want to hear from you on this. This is an honest question, Dan. I'm not even trying to be funny. The debt limit deal is far from ideal, but it's evidence Biden's strategy is working. In what world is it working? And on the other side, there are a number of troubling elements, including the provision that will put risk food assistance for very low income older adults. So that's Biden getting the deal done. I'm just trying to interpret this. This policy will increase hunger and policy. Is that what they mean by Biden's strategy is working? That I don't understand it, but maybe you can help me enter the understanding promised land.
No, everything from the Democrats that they said there, it's worse than not having a messaging strategy. It's just completely wrong. I remember when Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer were talking about, we've learned some just when he had gotten elected. Oh, we've learned some lessons with the Obama administration. We know how the Tea Party caucus and the Freedom Caucus really ran roughshod over us with a debt ceiling, and we're really gonna learn those lessons and make sure we do right by the American people. And there really has been no intent to do that. Another last point from what you mentioned earlier was that overall, you can see a government in any country, wherever they do and what they prioritize based on what is in their budget and what they're doing with that budget. They're cutting money from the IRS because they're caving to Republicans who don't want people in the top 10% to be audited, so we have more revenue in this country in order to pay for our things, which should be the conservative position to do. But then you also have money being taken away from the COVID emergency, and there are people on the left who have disabilities, who are more susceptible to COVID, and it's still an emergency for them. We can't just leave folks behind because of this absolutely sort of, Democrats deciding, okay, screw this group over here, lightly screw that group over there. It's okay, they'll vote for us because the Republicans are even worse. Let's just lay on that. We can tell you're doing that, Democrats, and it's really sickening, and it's really disappointing that those furthest on the left in the Democratic Party aren't standing up and causing as much of a fuss as Kirsten Sinema or Joe Manchin would. Even rhetorically, it needs to be there so that Joe Biden, if he were savvy, he would go, hey, listen what these lefties are gonna make me do. We gotta go back to the negotiating table and maybe give them some of what they want, or else the entire thing goes over. Or even if Joe Biden's not gonna work with you, which is the more likely thing, doesn't matter. He has to answer to that because more people are going to be bringing up that question. Then the press secretary has to talk about it, then media talks about it, and that's how you sway public opinion. But there are Democrats who just don't even seem to be willing to do even that, and that is a lot's on the line.
No, it's sick, it's immoral. I mean, just ask the Freedom Caucus. You got 20 people in that caucus, and about 5 of them will stand up and make their demands known. Why can't the so-called Progressive Caucus, and I keep calling them so-called because they haven't shown that they're willing to put anything on the line for the least of these in this country, not one thing, not one.